Hi, I think I promised you a video about all of the books I'm most excited to read in 2025, as in new releases, but I've had a little think about it, and quite honestly, I'm not that excited. Not to not read book, but for the new releases. There's Ocean Vuong's new novel, there's Natasha Brown's debut Universality that I'm really looking forward to, but aside from those, to be honest, I keep picking up new releases, reading a bit, putting them down, and then not picking them back up. Some of the best books I read in 2024 were found on dusty op shop shelves. I discovered authors like Carson McCullers and Jean Reese, J.D. Salinger. I picked up all of his works and ended up becoming fixated on him. I spoke about him in my Best Books of 2024 video. The allure of being the first to talk about a hyped up new release is certainly there, but at the end of the day, what's the point? What's the point? All books are going to be old books soon enough, and I've mentioned it before, I'll mention it again. I'm a hedonist. Don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me what to read. God forbid I stick to my word, you know. What, God forbid I talk about books and then I actually have to read them on this channel. Super marketable. I'm so marketable, aren't I? I instead am inspired by a certain customer at work. Okay, it's this guy that comes in and he will put the novel he's reading on the counter and point to a reference to a writer or a novel or a work or a book or some art and ask me, is this real or fiction? He does this all the time, and I will sometimes know, oh, that's a reference to George Orwell's 1984. 1984, is that a history book? No, it's a fictional novel, the idea of the dystopian year of 1984. Okay, great. Can I get a copy? Do you have it in stock? Yeah, no worries, here it is. Or I'll have to Google it, and we'll find that this person doesn't exist. It's a fictional character in this novel, or maybe they do exist, and then we have to look up which work he'd like to read. We read a bit of their Wikipedia together. I don't know where I'm going with this, but it's so fun. It's like a treasure hunt. It's a trail of references. So I come to you today not with the new books of 2025, but rather the old books, because some of these are quite old. These are the authors that are on my radar, the authors I want to get stuck into the work of within the next year, within the next couple of years, writers I've heard from other writers, from works of fiction and non-fiction, from essays and academic writing, and through comments, some of your amazing, brilliant suggestions, and maybe you'll discover a new author that piques your interest, or be reminded of someone you've been meaning to read, and then maybe tell me some more authors you're excited to read. This is all really such a selfish endeavor, isn't it? Never mind. Let's get stuck into it. First up is Maryse Condé, who was recommended to me when I asked for Caribbean literature recommendations. I am obsessed with Jamaica Kincaid's work. She's a writer from Antigua, and I was like, I need to read more Caribbean literature if it's all going to be this good. And everybody told me to read Maryse Condé, who was from Guadeloupe, which is an island in the Caribbean. It's a French department, and she was born in 1937. She attended Paris Sorbonne and got her PhD, and I read an article in The Guardian where she spoke about how attending university was when she first discovered the language of colonialism, and growing up in Guadeloupe, the sentiment of her parents and her elders was France is the best, France is a beautiful country. In this article in The Guardian, she speaks of reading Wuthering Heights at 12 years old and what a transformative experience it was, which I read Wuthering Heights at 12 years old, and it absolutely is. But she speaks about how an English novel could speak to the Caribbean heart, and also the similarities between what she was experiencing in her life and the island, and then these wily, windy moors. And I think that's so interesting because I hadn't really connected that before, the Gothic nature of the Caribbean literature I've read, specifically Jamaica Kincaid, but a lot of the characteristics of Gothic literature, of, you know, the melding of the paranormal and of reality, the undead, of dysfunctional love and pathetic fallacy, are so present in Jamaica Kincaid's work. And it makes me so excited to read this. So I picked up Crossing the Mangrove, yes, because it's like 160 pages. I know she's known for epics and historical fiction, which isn't really my forte, so I'm just trying to ease myself into it. One of her most famous works is I, Tituba, the Black Witch of Salem, which follows a witch in Salem, Massachusetts. I actually can't say that state. I'm so sorry, Americans. Massachusetts. Jesus. And then this witch falls in love with a slave, I'm pretty sure, and obviously everything that happens in Salem with the witch trials. I have to say I am very interested in that one. But yeah, I picked up Crossing the Mangrove. Francis Sanchez always said he would come to an unnatural end. So when this handsome newcomer to the Guadeloupean village of Rivière-aux-Selles is found dead, face down in the mud, no one is particularly surprised. Loved by some and reviled by others, Francis was an enigmatic figure. Where did he come from? What caused his strange nocturnal wanderings? What devils haunted him? As the villagers come to pay their respects, they each reveal another piece of the mystery behind his life and death, and their own buried secrets and stories come to light. People say that on the first night Francis Sanchez spent in Rivière-aux-Selles, the wind in its temper screamed down from the mountains. The cover is quite beautiful as well. So if you have any other Caribbean literature or any other Gothic fiction outside of the UK to recommend, let me know. Okay guys, I'm finally gonna do it. I'm gonna read an Eliza Clark book. People have been hounding me for years. Hounding. That's so rude. My friends have been telling me I would probably enjoy her work. Hounding. Best known for her dark debut Boy Parts, in which a young woman gets a job at a gallery and becomes obsessed with taking photos of average men, I'm pretty sure. She went on to write Penance, which explored the true crime community and was sort of a critique on the way women and women's deaths and murders are spoken about. And now she's brought out a short story collection, She's Always Hungry, which is about a teenager longs for perfect skin, a scientist tends to fragile alien flora, a young man takes the night into his own hands. Each of these characters has a desperate desire. Can any of them be sated? Unsettling, revelatory, and laced with her signature dark humor, Eliza Clark's debut short story collection plumbs the depths of that most basic human feeling, hunger. What has drawn me to read Eliza Clark now, after a lot of the hype has died down, is maybe because the hype has died down and people are still talking about her. She seems to have maintained a level of quality that's quite impressive. She doesn't seem like a one-hit wonder. Doesn't seem like she was riding the coattails of Ottessa Moshfegh, of that unhinged woman, crazy psychosexual trend, which, let's be honest, was a bit of a trend, but I could make a whole video on that. What passes for horror, for feminist horror these days? I love the uncanny. I love body horror, and I feel like Eliza Clark delves into all of those with the dark humor that I also appreciate. And this is a bit of a cheat putting this in here, because I actually did read a bit of Penance, but I listened to it on audiobook, and the audiobook was not good, so I'm not counting that. I need to pick that back up, but the actual physical copy. So, Eliza Clark. Feminist, weird, body horror, dark, twisted, subversive, adjectives, noun, adverb. Okay. I was perusing the shelves of my local Savers when a name jumped out at me, and I went, I know that name. I recognize that name. Where do I recognize that name from? It is Bruno Schultz, and I picked up The Street of Crocodiles. I either heard about Bruno Schultz from Deborah Levy, one of her living autobiography memoirs, I love you, Deb, or maybe it was in Santiago Amigurena's The Ghetto Within, which is an Argentinian novel about a Polish man that flees Warsaw to Buenos Aires right before the war breaks out, but his entire family are still in Warsaw. And it's a very interesting, detached look at the generational effects of surviving the Holocaust in a way that was not directly experiencing it. He is considered one of the leading Polish language writers of the 20th century, and often is compared to Kafka. His writing is meant to be quite metaphorical, quite absurdist. His amalgamation of identities is super interesting as this Polish Jewish man who was fluent in German, and although, you know, surrounded and entrenched in Jewish culture, wasn't familiar with Yiddish. He also never left his provincial hometown. Instead, he was a teacher there, and he wrote a lot over his lifetime, but unfortunately a lot of his works were lost during the Holocaust. He actually was shot by the Gestapo as he was just on the street walking home in the ghetto he lived in Ukraine. I also read that his work always takes place close to home in the place he grew up, however doesn't mention time or historic events, which is quite interesting. I'm very interested to see how a writer will write a place that has changed hands so many times in his lifetime, from being part of the, I guess, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, all the way to Ukraine, Soviet Ukraine, to then Nazi Germany. So I'm going to start with The Street of Crocodiles, set in the Polish city of Drobovice is a street of memories and dreams where recollections of Bruno Schulz's uncommon boyhood and of the eerie side of his merchant family's life are evoked in a startling blend of the real and the fantastic. Most memorable and most chilling is the portrait of the author's father, a maddened shopkeeper who imports rare birds' eggs to hatch in his attic, who believes tailors' dummies should be treated like people, and whose obsessive fear of cockroaches causes him to resemble one. Okay, Kafka. Bruno Schulz, a Polish Jew killed by the Nazis in 1942, is considered by many to have been the leading Polish writer between the two world wars. Billy Ray Belcourt is an author who, whenever a new book of theirs comes out, I hear people talk about it and I go, need to read that. Which is why I have a copy of A History of My Brief Body. I think I bought this as soon as it came out because it just grabbed me and I never ended up reading it. It is a memoir. It's a collection of essays about Billy Ray's life. He is a writer and an academic from the Driftpile Cree Nation, I believe. His work explores love and gender and autonomy and sexuality and family and culture and the legacy of colonial violence in Canada. I'm pretty sure he's the youngest ever winner of the Griffin Prize. The way people speak about his writing is that it has a certain clarity to it. I know that it's heavily referential and intertextual, which I greatly enjoy, as does the customer at the bookshop that asks me whether certain books and writers are real or not. Honestly, you give me a book that is advertised as a meditation, I will likely enjoy it. Although I've never been able to concentrate during yoga, I'm too afraid I'm gonna fart. A History of My Brief Body is what I'm going to start with. It is on memory, gender, anger, shame, and ecstasy, but also the outline of a way forward. With startling honesty and in a voice distinctly and assuredly his own, Belcourt situates his life experiences within a constellation of seminal queer texts, among which this book is sure to earn its place. Massacre describes this as not so much a memoir as it is a brilliant deconstruction of memoir itself. If I'm going to read nonfiction, I want it to be a deconstruction of memoir itself. I'm being fully honest with you. I'm not a huge fan of nonfiction. I just find it so much less believable than fiction. Of course, Deborah Levy's trilogy, Living Autobiography, are some of my favorite books of all time, and they are nonfiction. So I'm always interested in works that kind of subvert the form. Yippee! My manager read Sisters by a River by Barbara Comyns and immediately had to loan it to me. She said it is exactly something I would enjoy, although I'm a little afraid to read it as it's alone, because if I am going to enjoy it as much as she expects, which I trust her, she knows my reading taste. The books I love most I tend to manhandle and destroy, so I might have to get my own copy of this. Barbara Comyns is one of those recently rediscovered mid-century novelists, I think thanks to the Paris Review, who may have reissued her work or published an article on her, don't quote me on that. And I see why there is this resurgence in popularity, because her books are weird girl books, and they fit right into the current mood and climate of literature being published today. On the banks of the River Avon, 5 sisters are born. The seasons come and go, the sisters take their lessons under the ash tree, and always there is the sound of water swirling through the weir. Then, unexpectedly, an air of decay descends upon the house. Ivy grows unchecked over the windows. Angry shouts split the summer air. The milk sours in the larder, and their father takes out his gun. Tragedy strikes the family, and before long, the furniture is being auctioned off and the sisters are dispersed among relatives. In her daring, witty first novel, originally published in 1947, Barbara Comyns' unique young heroine relates the vivid and the bittersweet story of her childhood. It sounds Shirley Jackson-esque. It sounds a little Carson McCullers. I love a freaky little girl. Give me a freaky little girl protagonist and she has my heart. I know that it has social realism, but also elements of like fairy tale and of the gothic, which is very exciting. Let me actually read to you a little bit of her Wikipedia entry because I think it's so awesome. During the late 1930s, Comyns began a relationship with the black marketeer Arthur Price. The couple lived with Comyns' 2 children at various London addresses. Comyns generated money by modelling, converting houses into apartments, breeding poodles, renovating pianos, dealing in the antique furniture and classic cars, and drawing for commercial advertisements. That's awesome, bro. That's awesome. I've struggled to get my hands on it, but I also really want to read her other novel, The Vet's Daughter, which does interest me a little more. It's about a vet who lives with his bedridden wife and shy daughter Alice in a sinister London suburb. He works constantly captive to a strange private fury and treats his family with brutality and contempt. After his wife's death, the vet takes up with a crass, needling woman who tries to refashion Alice in her own image. And yet, as Alice retreats ever deeper into a dream world, she discovers an extraordinary secret power of her own. Like, oh my god. And oh, this is, I think it was The Vet's Daughter that was published by New York Review Books, and I think that caused the resurgence. Barbara Common's an author I have put off reading just because I simply know I will love her. Like, there's no other way this could go, let's be so honest. Jacqueline Hartman's I Who Have Never Known Men is the book of the season, and I only recently discovered that it was originally published in 1995. I thought it was a new release with how popular it's been, but no, it was published in 1995, and she's actually written quite a lot, but not a lot has been translated because, again, I didn't know that she's a Belgian writer who wrote in French. I found that out looking up Orlando, which I found at the op shop. This is so hard to get in Australia, and it was just sitting there on the shelf of my local Savers. Oh, what happened? What happened there? Oh my god. And it has a name in it and a date. I'll cover the name, but it says Melbourne, September 1999. So this would have probably been when it was first published. When was it first published? First published in Great Britain in 1999. Oh, so this is a first edition. It's a pity it's all torn up. But that's cool. That's really cool. Anyway, what was I saying? Okay, no, another tangent. Why, when I was traveling to Belgium, did I research at great lengths authors who were Belgian to read there and couldn't find any that interested me? And I feel like every second book I pick up now, the author just is coincidentally Belgian. Isn't everyone in Belgium just coincidentally Belgian? Joking. Joking, my Belgians. Alfiederzan or whatever you say. Joking. My beef with Belgium is well known. Really into piss though. Really into piss, Brussels. Very into piss. So, Orlando, most importantly, has a beautiful cover. How would it be to jump into the skin of another? To be both a man and a woman at once? And what would happen if you found yourself attracted to yourself? I just made the connection between Orlando and Orlando. I love Orlando by Virginia Woolf. That's really, wow. The synapses are not firing today. Also, if you haven't seen the film adaptation of Orlando starring Tilda Swinton as the sex-changing Orlando, oh my god, it's so good. So good. Historically, I have enjoyed Orlando-inspired books as well, like Paul Takes the Form of a Mortal Girl, which was absolutely fantastic. Beneath a mousy exterior, 35-year-old college lecturer Aileen seethes with frustration. Sick of being bullied by her mother and treated like a piece of furniture by Albert, her live-in lover, one day Aileen leaps from her own skin into the far more attractive body of Lucien, whom she spots in the cafe at Gare du Nord. From here, this brilliantly imaginative story runs on parallel lines. While Aileen sensibly catches the train back to her orderly life, Aileen Lucien, or Orlando as her bold new composite self is called in homage to Virginia Woolf, follows, dragging chaos in his wake. Jacqueline Hartman, herself once a psychoanalyst, revels in the confusion as ego falls for alter ego and mothers, sisters, and lovers begin to ask awkward questions in this unusual perceptive comedy of double selves and bisexuality. Not the B word. Wait. Ugh, and something about trains is so transient. Am I really about to just say that? The trains are transient. Yeah, no shit, bro. I need to shut up. I love train stations though. They do feel like different realities, and they feel so romantic as well. This, I guess, is like Queer Before Sunrise. Imagine instead if Ethan Hawke had just jumped into Julie Delpy's body. Would that have not solved all of their problems? Jacqueline Hartman asks that exact question, I guess. I probably will read I Who Have Never Known Men first because it's a novella and I'm weak, and I can probably read it in like 3 lunch breaks at work. But I'm actually now very excited about Jacqueline Hartman. More excited than when I started this video. Alright, I think I'm gonna leave it there so as not to overwhelm you. So here were 6 authors I'm excited to read the work of, to delve into, and what I'm gonna start with. If anyone thinks I should start with a different one of any of these authors' works, please let me know. It's good to make a good first impression. And I have plenty more names on my list. I have a list with names, and they're just the names of authors I want to read. So I could do a part 2 to this, and probably a part 3 and 4 if it's wanted. I should also probably do my monthly wrap up. I've been slacking, if that's wanted. Yeah, thank you as always for watching, for listening to me yap, and I'll see you next video. Okay, love you, bye!